Hi everyone, we're here. We're so sorry for being 2 minutes late. We can blame Zach for that one. As per it was
It was me.
it was me.
That was me. I'll take it.
Hands in the
It was
air.
me. I'm blaming Zach because he was the one person that didn't come to the pre-record, like the preamble of this. So that's
I'm a
why I blame
diva.
Zach.
Guilty as charged. I'll take it.
Hi everyone. Thank you all for joining us today. We have this was actually a record for Cognism. Already we have 235 people and rising joining us to watch today. We have, through the magic of technology and Goldcast, there should be a way of you all writing messages. We would love to see where you're tuning in from, so please drop in name, location, the different countries that you're tuning in from. Usually we get like quite a diverse group. And maybe the job function you're doing. Are you an SDR? Are you an AE? We love to see all of your comments. I can see them coming through now. Antarctica. I don't know whether the Antarctica guy is lying. What do you guys think? Do you think that's realistic? I'm not sure.
Could be. It is cold calling after all.
Maybe.
Harry Robbins from Afghanistan.
Lovely. I really hope that that's true, but it'd be surprising based on the name. But great to see people from Amsterdam, London, Manchester. That's where you two are from, right?
Kind of. I'm there.
Okay.
Zach's down in the south, down in sunny Bournemouth.
I'm
But Dave, I want to
Bournemouth.
know where you are, Dave.
I'm in the Shard. I'm in a sweaty booth in an office in the Shard, which is the tallest building in Western Europe.
Wow.
Pretty cool.
Showing off a bit.
I know. I'm sorry to one up you both. But yeah, thanks for everybody for joining us. The plan today is we want to do this whole session on objection handling. We have about 45 minutes today to go through it. I've got two fantastic people joining me who know. You've probably seen them already all over LinkedIn. They know everything about cold calling. It is the gentlemen from We Have a Meeting, Zach and Jack. Thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you.
Our pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Can one of you give us a bit of an introduction to We Have a Meeting, what you guys do, and why you're going to be able to give so much great advice on objection handling today?
You do it, mate. You're the founding director. I'm just a co-guy over here.
Okay. We're a outsourced sales agency. We typically get brought in by businesses who are struggling to get enough meetings in the diary. Maybe they're meeting the wrong types of people, or they're looking to break into a new sector. We solve that top of funnel problem. We're very expensive. You shouldn't use us. We use Cognism. We're great. We're good looking, and we lie a lot. Thanks.
Love it. Absolutely love it. So for this session, we're about to go through some really common objections, and I'm going to ask Jack and Zach for their best advice on how to handle these objections. But also, we may have some time at the end for any other objections that you in the audience have. There is a Q&A section on Goldcast, so it's different from the chat section. It's a Q&A section. Feel free to write your objections that you're struggling in that Q&A section. Just click the tab that says Q&A and write in there, and then other people can upvote your objections, so we can answer the ones that the majority of you want answering. Exactly, the good ones. Thank you. So yeah, that's all. I think the prelim done. I suppose the only other thing is before we kick off is objections can be a really contentious topic. One of the reasons it can be a really contentious topic is because the reality of objections is there's no silver bullet. What works for me might not work for Zach, might not work for Jack. And so all three of us might have different ways of handling different objections. And that is the beauty of sales. If there was one silver bullet every single time, Zach and Jack would 100% be billionaires because you just reel that off every single time. So on that no silver bullet, we'd love also for you to write in the chat how you're handling these objections and any comments, feedback that you have as well. So why don't we go on to the first objection? I'll stop talking. First objection is I've made a cold call. I've interrupted someone's day and they're straight off the bat. They're like, nope, I'm busy, I'm running into a meeting. Zach Thompson, would you like to kick us off there? How are you handling this objection?
Well, I think the preamble to a lot of these is going to be the same. Often our biases fill in the gaps with what that actually means. I'm busy, I'm running into a meeting could be a defense mechanism. So if what you're about to say is not of interest, I have the fallback of, well, like I said, I'm going into a meeting. Can often be a very British thing to do. What we like, we've rang up and said, look, I'll be honest, it's a cold call. Do you want to hang up on me or let me have 30 seconds? They say, I'm busy, I'm about to run into a meeting. You say, well, look, I can call you back. Would it make sense to sum up why I'm calling you now? And that way, if it's not worth me calling you back, I never have to bother you again. That typically buys us that opportunity to hit them with that 2 or 3 big picture problem pitch.
I love that. I love that. Jack, do you have the same view or differing views?
I have a very similar view, David. I think it's one of those things of like, the thing with objections, right, is, and this probably comes from Marcus Kalki, who probably got it from somebody else, but like, there's no original objection. You're not on the phone with somebody and you're thinking, oh my days, no one's ever said this in the history of humanity before. So I'm busy, I'm running into a meeting, is something that you're going to come across. So you've got to be prepared for it. And that's kind of why we have that objection handle ready as a ledge. So we're trying to work out if it is a legitimate objection and they actually are in a meeting. I always think when people, if somebody answered the phone and said, I'm in a meeting, what do you want? If it was that important, they wouldn't pick up the phone. Like, no one's ever picked up the phone and said, oh, sorry, I'm at a funeral at the moment, and they're lowering the coffin. So you've got to remember, like, if it was that important, they're not going to pick up the phone. So I think just having that ledge that you can run into and saying, look, yeah, absolutely, I appreciate you're a busy man, and then leading into, is it worth me running through? So that way I never have to bother you again. We're just trying to get that permission just so we can continue the conversation and maybe suss out whether it's worth calling back or what we can do to present the next call. But Dave, I want you to disagree with me. What would you do?
Okay, well, I'll tell you what the other school of thought is. I actually agree. Unfortunately, I agree with you on this one, but I'll tell you what the other school of thought here is, right? I've heard people say in the past, well, you know, I'm speaking to, I've got someone on the phone. They're a key contact of mine at a key account that I know has this pain. They're saying they're busy. Like, I don't want to catch them and annoy them. I don't want to burn that bridge. So is it better to just go down the direction of saying, hey, you know, like, okay, no problem. When is the best time to call you back? Like, that would be, I'm not going to die on this sword because I don't believe in it, but that would be the other school of thoughts, right? So, Zach, I don't know, like, whether you have any views on that, or Jack, for that
matter. People can give a counterfeit yes. So that's people, when they feel like they're interrogated or backed into a wall, can just say anything to get you off the phone. So what can often happen is, and this is all about how you handle next steps as well. Yeah, I appreciate you're going to go into when's a better time to call me back. Oh, call me back at 4:30. I then block your number, or I don't answer the call. Or I've got a very clear sign. That guy who calls me at 4:30, I'm not going to answer that call. So you've got to be careful about the intention of what's being said. So I would be careful with that one.
I'd also say, like, define what a key account is. So that's someone cold that you've never spoken to before. And I think it's one of those that, like, if you've never spoken to them before, this is why we're big on our different pattern interrupts, because if you don't introduce yourself as, hi, it's Jack calling from Cognism, when you say I'm busy, I'm running into a meeting, and you try, and they go, no, I'm busy. We think we take that, and I go, God, I remember when Dave said no, he was busy, and he snapped at me. I bet Dave hates me now. 2 weeks later, sadly, Dave, you're a very busy man who hasn't given that cold call a second thought because you're a very busy person. So we're sat there thinking, I bet they hate me. I bet they're thinking about me. I don't want to burn any bridges, which is fine. But from a mindset point of view, I think just be careful, because actually we think that people think about us too much when seldom they don't. I think there was a beautiful quote in there somewhere.
Seldom they do. But
seldom they do.
No, it's
sorry.
Fine. I saw the. It's okay.
You saw where I was going with it.
And one more thing, Jack, you mentioned, like, telling whether it's a legitimate objection or not, right? You know, are there times, is there other ways that you can tell whether it is a legitimate objection or not, based on, because, you know, I've said there, oh, I'm busy and running into a meeting, but perhaps it's, you know, they might be saying, oh, I'm just running out with the kids, or, like, you know, like, there's other versions of this statement. So is there any way that you've seen, you know, like, is there, is there any way from your experience you've gone, okay, that has told me that they might actually legitimately be busy, and it's better to go down a different route than saying, okay, let me just give you the quick overview to see if it's going to resonate?
Yeah, I think if there's screaming kids in the background, I'm not an animal, David. Like, I'm not going to try and force myself like into a conversation. I think it's picking up on the non-verbal cues as well. That the amount of times where I've called someone and they said, "Oh no, I'm busy. I'm on holiday at the moment," and you go, "Okay, yeah, absolutely, that's fine. I guess, is it worth me running through?" And then you have this brilliant conversation, and it might not lead to that meeting or whatever it is. I'll also be very careful when people tell you that they're going into a meeting and it's 11 minutes past 12. That's signs of a liar, isn't it? Who has a meeting at 11 minutes past 12? So I think, yeah, like it is hard. Like you said earlier, there's no silver bullet. Like, we're trying to work out what we can try and second guess things. We can look with hindsight. I always just test it. And as long as you're polite, how could somebody get mad? If you're like, no, I want to tell you why I'm calling. If it's like, yeah, I appreciate you busy. I thought you would be. I guess, is it worth me running through quickly? And if it's not relevant, I'll leave you there. No. Call me back. I'm running into a meeting. Cool. I'll call you back. When's good?
Yeah, 100%. I think if I was going to have a key takeaway from this, it's that they're not going to pick up the phone if they're that busy, realistically, right? So there must be an element of time that they're willing to give us, and it's about how we can maximize that time while they're on the phone. For that unique time that they're on the phone. You mentioned the holiday thing as well there, Jack. If someone says that they're on holiday, my instant response is, "Oh, where are you?" I find that so diffusing, and that's what you can do a lot of these times, because again, it's not like it's not immediately. I think the human emotion and the very empathetic emotion is like believing them and going, "Oh my gosh, they're so busy," and taking that at face value. But I think if you dig into it a little bit, then you'll often find they're not, and exactly like everybody's saying here, like, it's just really important when you've got them on the phone, you've got to take advantage of that situation. Okay, should we move on to the next?
Let's do it.
Okay, we are using a competitor. All right, so this is probably, where the last objection was coming right at the start. This is probably coming somewhere in the middle. I know that we've got lots of people here from lots of different companies, so I'm probably going to have to speak pretty generally to this one. But I would love to hear from you both, like how maybe you've pitched your product and then someone said, "Oh, actually, we're using this competitor." How are you responding to that objection?
Shall I go?
You go, please, Zach.
I think the best thing to do, because of the point you just made there, David, if we don't know the context behind every single person who's on here, the best thing is probably to teach a move rather than here's exactly what you say. So we're using a competitor. Any objection or statement or stall or question should always be welcomed the same way, with you acknowledge it and welcome it. So we're using a competitor, something like, "You know what I thought you would be." Makes sense. And then we're almost going to show ourselves out, and we're going to say, "I probably can't help you, but just before I go, do you mind if I ask you one last question?" So I'm already acknowledging, I get it. You're using a competitor. I'm cold calling. You probably want me to go. I'm going to go. But just before I go, like that Columbo moment, one more thing. I've got one more thing I want to ask you before I go. And then we're going to use some form of question that maybe gets us back into the conversation and opens up a few different paths. The nuance to this is it must never be a why question, because why, when someone's still in that fight or flight mode, it's very defensive. If I said to you, "David, what did you do on the weekend?" you'd be comfortable telling me. If I said, "How was it?" you'd be comfortable telling me. If I said, "Why did you do it?" you go, "What do you mean, why did I do it?" And you get very defensive. Why lives in a very emotional part of the brain. So whatever that next question is, what was the problem you tried to solve when you started using them? How long have you been using them for? When was the last time you reviewed them? What would you rate them out of 10? Whatever you pick, don't pick a why question. People get annoyed.
Great advice. Absolutely fantastic advice. Jack, do you have anything to add?
I'll probably just pad out. One of my favorite ones is the scale of 1 to 10. So it's taking them down that path. We're trying to be a slippery snake and get our way into the conversation. Okay, interesting. Yeah. I've heard of those guys, whoever those guys may be. Okay, can I ask one last question, David? Yeah. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate them? Now, because of the negative bias in humanity, nobody's ever going to say a 10. Sometimes they will, and everything's perfect. And that's typically a nice way of saying, you've had your 30 seconds. I don't want to discuss with you anymore. If you get an 8, 9, there's room. But when you get the 7s, the 6s, the 5s, and then anything less than like a 4, you're in. Okay, interesting. 7 out of 10. Okay. And why didn't you pick a bigger number? Or what would it have to be a 10? Okay, so you could take them down that path, and then you're looking for what is the difference between 7 and a 10? Well, they don't integrate with X. It doesn't work on the weekends. It only comes in blue, and then you're in. Okay, and how's that a problem? Or how do you know? And then you go down that path, and that's trying to get back into problem, impact, and taking them down that path of, is there a problem with this competitor? Have they solved the problem that they were trying to solve originally?
Could not agree more, Jack. That is
Dave,
exactly.
I don't want that. I want disagreement.
I know. For context here, everybody, I told Jack that I was going to disagree with everything that he was going to say before this, just to put him on edge a little bit. But unfortunately, he's coming through at the moment. That is exactly how we're training our team today. That exact question, and it works. You know, it's the one that I used when I was calling regularly. I think that the instant reaction, the natural human reaction that people give to we're using a competitor is often, oh, how are you finding it? And then unfortunately, 60, 70% of the time, people will be like, yeah, pretty good. And so that, if you're someone that steps that way and says, how are you finding it? And you get that response, which is always going to happen. That's another great way of responding to that, to like, yeah, pretty good, is go down that path of, okay, and what would you rate it out of 10? Because exactly what Jack said, it's so rare that you get a 10. So if you're not doing that already, definitely try that out. How do we, one question that comes up a lot about competitors is like, do we criticize competitors when they come up? How do we handle talking about the differences between our tool, our solution, and a competitor solution?
There's a bias in human beings that everyone should be aware of called reactance. The more someone notices I'm trying to persuade them, the more they're going to go the total opposite direction. So we're wired now to recognize when people start to slag off competitors, they're actually trying to persuade us. So the reactions to that can be quite strong. Also, we tend not to like people in our own lives that are gossipy. So it relates to what your relationship is with people who tend to slag other people off quite a lot. So we're probably of the mindset of go the total opposite direction. So if you're using a competitor already, I'd be trying to talk you into, why don't you stay with them longer? Those problems you're having, when you went to the company you use at the minute and said, here's the problems I'm having, what did they tell you? Why didn't that work? And I start trying to talk them into using the competitor. And because of that reactance bias, the more that I do that, the more they talk themselves out of why they can't and all the problems that they're having. So it's a lot more pull away rather than push, which is what most salespeople do.
Yeah, it's the don't call someone's baby ugly story, right? It's the, like, this is their pride and joy. Maybe they made that decision on taking that competitor on. So you're not actually criticizing the competitor, you're criticizing their decision. So you got to be really, really careful for that. Jack, there's a comment in the chat saying, is it possible to challenge a 10?
I wrote that down. I've got a point on that. But I want to give people a little mindset thing when it comes to like slagging off competitors and things like that. You've got to remember that sometimes customers are really happy, and imagine that one of your competitors, so somebody from a Cognism competitor, is calling a Cognism customer. What would you want them to say? You'd want them to be happy. And sometimes there is a line of like, is that an objection? But sometimes people are genuinely happy, and that's okay. Remember, you can't kind of handle every objection. So I think that's a good mindset. So is it possible to challenge a 10? So they go 10 out of 10. Yeah, I'm really happy. Interesting. I thought you might be. Accept it. Okay. So there's the other line that you could go down is like a future tense way. Okay. And what would have to change in the future for you to reconsider that number? Or what would have to change for you to look at someone else? Well, X, Y, and Z. They might say this. They might have to change this. It might get more expensive. And then I'd deny it and push it away and go, yeah, but the chances of that happening, they're a 10 out of 10. That's not going to happen. I'm not going to go like, I'm not going to try and be, well, what if that does happen, and try and be all like negative about it. I'm going to deny that what they've said might happen. They go, well, no, they actually had a meeting with me last week and they said the prices are due to rise. Okay, and then what? And then I try and get them opening up. Remember, we're not just trying to twist it quickly. We're trying to get them to open up and give us a bit more information. I don't know if that helps you challenge tens. I hope it does, Axel.
I think it definitely should. Robert has claimed that he's been told that he's a 10. So to be honest, I think our whole audience joining in today is a 10 out of 10. So for everybody else that's never been called a 10. Final point on competitors. If one of you can pick this one up. I talk to my team all the time about the importance of competitor knowledge. You know, we're in a competitive space for our product. It's really important to know our competitors. Do either of you have any advice? Like you're new into maybe you're moved into a new company, or you're new into sales in general, like of a way that you've if you're in a competitive space, how do you absorb all that information? How do you store that information? You know, how do you make yourself ready to address competitors as they come up during cold calls?
Very contextual question. If you're in a space where everyone knows what you do, who you are, and you have 3 or 4 competitors, it's probably worth knowing that. I don't know anything about any of our competitors, what they do, what their unique selling points are, their case studies, what makes them unique. I know nothing about any of our competition, their pricing model, nothing. Our whole sales process is, like I said before, about the other person. So it's very prospect focused. And when they bring up what they're doing already, I'm more of the mind of, why don't you just keep doing that? I'm less about, let me find that little hole, that little feature they don't have, because that might not be important. So I could be making an assumption. Oh, is the data real time? No, but I don't really care. I'm just then starting to throw features at someone that aren't even relevant or going to stick. So I think there's definitely nuance to it. If you're in a space where there's only a few competitors, everyone knows who you are already, it's probably worth knowing the differences. If you're not, and it's a much broader space, like there's thousands of people who do what me and Jack do, it's probably not worth our time to know all the nuances of every individual one. It's a bit of a politician's answer. I feel shameful for saying it, but I don't support Tony Blair. All right, I've said it.
You're probably best to answer that, David. Like, what? So why do you train them that way? Like in that sense?
Yeah. So I think having really good competitor knowledge in a competitive space can give you that edge. If you know the common issues that people are having with competitors, and then you just know straight away how to solve those, how your product can solve those issues, I think that can give you a major edge. But I think what Zach said is actually, the most important thing. Like, it shouldn't be a focus on picking apart the competitor, but more the value you offer. And I think that what one tactic that I use when it comes to objections, and I think if I was to give you a general objection tactic, it's whenever someone says an objection, my first response is to ask them another question. Like, no matter what it is, I'm always asking them another question. And the reason for that is because, kind of going back to the, I'm busy, I'm running to a meeting. Usually what people give you is the surface level reason, problem. And in actual fact, there's a deeper problem that we need to understand. So so what we can do, when I'm thinking about my competitors and I know that what the general problems are, I can ask those leading questions to guide me to that point where they're likely to give me a problem that I already understand. So, but and I actually think that you kind of you said it was the politician's answer. I think it was the correct answer of to be honest with you, the most important thing is being really focused on what you offer and what your services provide. From there, so could not agree more.
I think you like me, don't you, David? You didn't think you would.
I can't believe, for anybody that follows Zach and Jack on LinkedIn, it turns out they're really nice guys. They come across all bravado on LinkedIn, but apparently really nice guys.
This is being recorded as well. Wow.
I know.
Show my mother.
Takeaways from that one for me: empathy when really positivity when they first mention a competitor. Let's definitely be using that 0 to 10. And as Zach mentioned at the end, let's really be focused on what we can offer to support them versus the competitor. Okay, can we move on to the next one, please, marketing? Okay, can you send me an email? Now, there are lots of times that people can give this objection. So I'm happy for you to talk about any of those times, but I think the time that it most comes up and is most crucial is I've pitched the product. I've maybe even had a bit of a conversation on it. I'm looking to try and book them in for a meeting, and they've said, "Can you just send me an email instead?" So I would love for us to focus on it coming up there, but happy for you to touch on any other times it might come up. Jack, okay. Do you want to kick off this time?
Yeah, I was going to say that. Do you want me to take looping or a pushback?
Why don't you take pushback? I'll do looping.
Okay. So there's a couple of different ways that we could look at this. I think one of the things that we're always on the lookout in sales is that counterfeit yes. Is somebody saying yes because they're too nice and they've given us a bit of their time and they don't actually want to be portrayed as the big bad CEO? So there are a few ways to push this away. So if someone says, "Can you send me an email?" Go, "Yeah, absolutely. I'm always going to accept it. I'm always going to be that friendly salesperson. But can I be really, really honest with you?" Okay. Typically, 9 times out of 10, when someone asks me for an email at this point where we've had a brief conversation, it's a nice, polite way of saying they're not interested. Is that the case here? And I probably use a bit of honesty, a bit of humor. They go, no, I am interested. You go, "Are you sure? I'm a salesperson. I can take rejection." And I try and get like a bit of a push. And you'll be surprised. Sometimes people would say, "Yeah, I was just being polite. I'm not interested." And then it's a case of, cool, I don't need to go and waste my time by sending you an email. But it's just pushing back. Okay, if I go away and I use my best GCSE English, what are the chances that you're going to reply to this? On a scale of 1 to 10, what are the chances that I never hear from you again? It's just testing the water, always getting a temperature check, and just making sure that if you are going to send an email, are they interested? And also aligning on the next step. Okay, well, brilliant. David, I can send you this email. What would you like me to do next? We'll send it over and I'll come back to you. Okay. And if you don't come back to me, should I assume that means you're not interested, you saw what it was and it actually didn't make sense? Or would it make sense for me to give you a call back next week and we can follow up? Yeah, do that. And then you've got a next step, a mini commitment all the way through. That is what I would say when it comes to pushing back. Especially at that part of the conversation. You could use something very similar at the start of the conversation, but if you're getting to send me an email and you've not even like pitched it yet, it's like you don't want to be sending emails to those people because they're being muggy, in my personal opinion.
Okay. So the other scenario is you're in the call, like David's point, you're in the call, you've maybe done a problem pitch, there's some qualification happening, but you're still getting send me an email. The first thing to do is to hold up the mirror and look back downstream. For someone to be qualified, regardless of what sales methodology you use, they need to, 1, have a problem you solve, and 2, be motivated to fix it. Those are really the only 2 things that you're looking for in a cold call, regardless of what methodology you believe in. Send me an email is a sign you've missed one of those. So like we said before, with all objections, the first thing is going to be to welcome it. And I would actually buy yourself quite a lot of space for this as well. So I'd say, yeah, cool, I can send you an email. Even if you've got it, to buy some time, I would say, could I just grab your email? I've got your mobile number, but I don't have your email. And I would get that space that I've really acknowledged that. Okay, and just so I'm sending the relevant thing, or just so I'm not sending you War and Peace, out of problem A, B, or C, which one was it you want me to focus on? So I'm never, ever sending someone just generic information. I'm never giving them, what would you like me to put in the email? I'm giving them the illusion of choice. Do you want me to send you information about A, B, or C problem, not feature? They pick one. Okay, that's interesting. That's different for everyone. Could you maybe give me an example of what that looks like? Then they're giving me an example. And then we're looping back to the start and back to the qualifying. That's why we call it looping. So step 1 is welcome. Buy yourself some time, write the email down. Step 2 is out of problem A, B, or C, which one am I focusing the email on? And then we're back into give me an example, talk to me about the impacts, root causes, all that good stuff. But we're looping back and giving us a chance to tick the boxes that we might not have ticked that led us to send me an email in the first place.
That is brilliant. You two, that is World class. You can tell you've done this before. I want to ask some kind of follow-up question. I'm gonna just quickly check the chat to see, but honestly, I could not agree more. I suppose that the only thing that sometimes comes up is how, like, I find especially newer SDRs, newer salespeople, they can be quite demotivating if that's coming up a lot. Is there anything that, like, any advice that you'd give for those people that are, quite regularly pitching the product and they're constantly getting this, oh, can you send me an email? Can you send me an email? Can you send me an email?
I think I don't want to just take your words and use them against you, David, but you said if you're pitching the product. So I think it's it's got to be a conversation, and I know that you support this anyway, but when you get to that point, you've always got to look upstream, and you've got to be the very self-aware salesperson and hold the mirror up and say, what did I do wrong? It's never the prospect's fault. It's always our fault. So if we've got to that point and someone's asking for an email, we've failed to get them. So that might be our pace, that could be our tonality, that could be we made the conversation about us, that could be we asked a question that made them snap out of it and made it feel like I was a salesperson. So I said, what's the impact of that? And it was a bit like it's a bit jarring, or I asked a why question at the wrong point. So I think it's for new people, it's like if you're getting to the point and you're having those conversations, it's a good sign. Like, especially for people that are new to sales, you should be getting rejections. You should be getting people sending me an email. Like, and it's a case of like, get better, listen to your calls, work on it. But always just look upstream and be like, okay, what in that call, what happened there? And when we do call training with our guys, if they ever say, right, here's a call where I got to send me an email, I'm listening to it. I'm like, it's not yet there. That's the moment, and you can typically pinpoint it. So if have the accountability to look at it yourself, or reach out to your sales manager, your team leader, and be like, this keeps happening. How can you support me? Where can I improve on that?
I'll give you, just on that, I'll give you the most common time you get send me an email as a new salesperson. When someone says, what do you do? And you give them the pitch of what you do, you always get send me an email after that. There's a way of answering that question without just giving someone your corporate spiel. But if you are doing that, you'll always get send me an email.
Okay, and you know what I'm going to say, Zach. So how do you respond to
what is it that you do?
Yeah.
The way our calls are framed are we lead with the problem. So if I was pitching for you, I would never say, I'm calling from Cognism, we're an award-winning data provider to the B2B space, or whatever like is on the website. I'd say, well, normally I'm invited in by sales managers who their team are knocking on the door every day saying, I need more leads, I need better quality people, and I need people who actually pick up whatever it may be, like some variation of that. So when they say, well, what is it that you actually do? I'd say, well, if I said I was a data provider that solved those problems out of problem A, B, and C, which one would most stand out? So I'm not giving the spiel. I'm just quickly, it's like tennis, like I'm quickly answering and then just whacking the ball back over to the other side without giving that pitchy, horrible moment, because you'll always send me an email after that.
I love that. And I really hope that some of my team are on this call. I've forgotten whether I invited them or not. But I really hope some of the team are on to taking some serious notes on that. We'll move on to the final one. I think there's only one more from our side. And then we can quickly jump to the Q&A before we wrap up. Can you call me back next quarter? It's the timing objection. So let's assume in this case it's not someone at the start of the call, because we've kind of already addressed that. We have had a decent conversation, and they've pushed us back. I've had it before where people have said to call me back in 2 years. So it really could be any kind of time. But how would you guys address this?
Jack?
Well, I like to just say really deadpan no, and leave a big silence and see what happens and see if it gets awkward. No, that doesn't work. Like always, accept it. Yeah, absolutely. Of course I can. I guess, but before I stick that in my calendar, can I ask you a bit of an honest question? Yeah, and we just want to unpack that situation. If they want to be called back next quarter, that's fine. There might be a reason, but we can't just accept things without having enough evidence of what that reason is. Okay, and between now and next quarter, it sounds like we might do a little label in there. It sounds like there's a particular reason for me to call you back next quarter. And I just ask it as a label. Okay, and then I'm what's going to change? What's going to happen? Okay. And I'm unpacking that situation of where they're going to be, using labels to get them to really paint a picture of, is it going to be a waste of my time? Is it going to be a waste of their time? But I think so many salespeople from probably a mindset thing, depends on like what level they're calling on. They're thinking, well, this person's a CEO and I'm just a humble little SDR. Yes, of course I'll call you back next quarter. And it's just a cycle of sticking it in the diary, moving it 3 months, and then dial in again. So it's like not being afraid to ask the tough questions of like, yeah, absolutely I can, but what's happening? Does that make sense?
100%. Zach, do you have anything to add there?
Only if you're looking for an alternative, like Jack mentioned, that the labeling technique, you might want to try the mirroring technique as well. And the importance of the mirroring technique is the tone. So mirroring is repeating 1 to 3 words from what someone just said. So I might say next quarter. And then when I say that, it feels like a question. I've probably bombarded them with questions at this point. When I mirror back, they say, yeah, because X, Y, and Z's happening. The thing I would be aware of with this is almost the back end logistics of what you do. So next quarter, think about how long it takes to implement what you do, how long the sales cycle typically is. If that would lead you into next quarter anyway, you can work backwards from that. And then those are, rather than having your ideas then thrown on the prospect, you need to ask those questions. So next quarter, they say, yeah, we're starting to look at budgeting, our contract ends, whatever it may be. Okay, so the company that you used before, how long did that process take to implement? Oh, it took about 6 months. Okay, when you say it took about 6 months, what were the moving parts? If they paint a picture that's longer than next quarter, really you should be talking now. So just work backwards from that, but use questions, use some of the techniques that we're talking about to get your prospect to paint that picture. And then the nice tidy wrap up at the end is, I don't know if this is ridiculous, but based on X, Y, and Z, it feels more like we should be talking now. And you're just using those words back that your prospects brought up and playing them back to them.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. And I think it keeps, there's a pattern emerging here of just going that layer deeper when we're getting these objections. Right, I'm going to move over to the Q&A. We've got about 5 minutes left. Gentlemen, I'm thinking we do these as quick fire to try and get through as many as we physically can. So I'm just going to go, Jack, Zach, Jack, Zach, Jack, Zach. First one from Deb Davenport. We've got 14 likes on this one. We handle all of that in-house. I think this one's should be right up your guys' alley. Jack, do you want to kick us off?
I'd probably want to handle. I'd probably want to unpack what that means, what that actually means. Okay, when you say you handle all of it in-house, what do you mean? And then I'd probably throw like a little bit of a negative in there. Okay, so it sounds like what would have to happen for you to outsource it? I might go down that angle as like a little bit of a like a last question, or I'd just go for like a negative frame of okay, and it sounds like you'd never outsource it in a million years. Well, no, we might, and then you're just looking for that little bit of thread that you can pull on. That's probably the way I take it.
100%. I think this objection kind of handles like a competitor. That's usually the way that we're thinking about it. The other thing that what I found from my experience is people think that they handle, you've only maybe you've explained like one piece of value and they're saying they handle it all in house, and actually like when you dive deeper into that, they haven't quite got the right idea of what you do, and they think of it something different. So definitely don't, the key thing is diving deeper like you would a competitor on how that's going and how they rate it so far. Okay, moving on to the next one. Zach, what is this is going off objections, which is slightly controversial, but what is the best introduction on cold calling instead of saying how are you? If Morgan Ingram was watching right now, he'd be laughing because he famously knows that I say, "Hey, how are you?" and that's how I open every call. So clearly, Celino hates my opener. Zach, how are you opening instead?
My favorite is I start the whole thing off with the negative frame. So if I was ringing Jack, I'd say, "That's not Jack. We have a meeting, is it?"
Oh yeah.
You're probably going to hate me for this. It's actually a sales call, so it's completely up to you. You can throw your phone out the window or let me have 30 seconds, then decide.
Go on, you can have your 30 seconds, love.
And then it's very important that next 30 seconds mentions nothing about me, mentions everything about Jack. I'm normally invited in by founders who are struggling with these 3 problems. And away we go.
Love that. Love that. It's another really honest approach that I've definitely seen work. Okay, next one up, Jack. We don't have any budget. No upvotes, but you know, apparently we're going with this one. So we don't have any budget. How are we handling that one, Jack?
I make a joke out of it because I don't think anyone, like, I've just cold called you out of the blue. So what are the chances that you're going to be sat there with a little cold calling budget? Do you know what I mean? You've got a little budget, a little pot of gold stashed away for the day that someone cold calls you and sells something. So it's just unpacking it. So yeah, absolutely. Okay. I didn't expect you to. And you're trying to get them. Okay. So let's imagine a world where that budget is off the table. I guess out the problems, it sounds like they actually don't exist. And you want to try and get them in. We're big fans of gap selling. So if the problem and the motivation is big enough, then you will find a budget to solve that problem. It's like if there's a massive hole in the roof and water's gushing through, well, then you're going to find, and your skin, you're going to find some money to fix that roof. So it's a case of like budget is like, it's a real buzzword and it's a real knee-jerk reaction that people think, I've had a lot of sales calls. I can just say budget and it will get rid of people. So just don't take it at face value. What is a budget?
100%. And, you know, like the majority, like we're targeting generally, the majority will be targeting, you know, serious businesses that can usually create the budget. They have the means to do that. Zach, Jess has said, call me back in 15 minutes and then they never pick up again. I think this is off the back of that first objection we were running through. Do you want to, like, what would be your advice to Jess?
Oh, it's so contextual because I don't know how the rest of the calls and call you back in 15 minutes and they never pick up again. I'd have to know where that was in the call. I'd have to know what the approach was. I don't know. I'm going to have to give you a bit of a rubbish response. I can't think of there's so many different angles. If that was right at the start, I said, I'm really interested in this. Call me back in 15 minutes and they never pick up again. Just take the loss. If it was a case of you've called them on their mobile and they were really interested and they're part of a bigger department and you never get hold of them again, ring someone else in that department. And so I was just talking to David the other day. He said that you were struggling with X, Y, and Z. I'm guessing I just caught him on a bad day and just start somewhere else. But when someone says, call me back in 15, send me an email, call me back, anything other than a money in the bank response, treat everything like a no or you'll go insane.
And Jess, you know, the advice that we gave earlier on people saying they're busy, don't take that call me back in 15 minutes at face value as well, and see if you can push for it. Unfortunately, that is all the time that we've got for today. Zach, Jack, this has been an absolute pleasure.
I've had a laugh. Have you had a laugh?
I've really enjoyed it.
It's
You
been
didn't think you would, David, did you? Be honest.
I absolutely did. Thank you for everybody that joined us today. If you loved it, then please let us know. I'm sure, you know, Zach Thompson on LinkedIn, Jack Frimston on LinkedIn. You can follow myself, David Bentham, on LinkedIn. Please let us know what you thought. Yeah, I think that there's Cognism are always doing these kind of webinars. If you want to see more of Jack and Zach on these webinars, then let us know as well. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us today, and let us know how your cold calls go. Happy hunting.
Happy hunting, folks.
Cheers, guys.